Something seismic just happened on live television. And if you blinked, you might have missed the moment that could define the next election. Because earlier today, Nigel Farage didn't just criticise the government. He didn't just question the Prime Minister. He didn't just throw a few political punches. He declared political war. And the target was none other than Keir Starmer. What unfolded during that live broadcast wasn't a routine interview. It wasn't a policy discussion. It wasn't a typical back and forth between political rivals. It was something much bigger than that. Something that felt like the opening shot of a full-scale election battle. Because Farage and his party, Reform UK, went on air and made one thing absolutely clear. They are no longer preparing for politics as usual. They are preparing for power. And the language they used said it all. They announced that Reform is moving on to what they called a war footing for the next general election. Not a campaign, not a strategy shift, a war footing. That means shadow cabinet positions. That means policy structures. That means election readiness. That means they believe the current government is wobbling and they're ready to take advantage of it. But the real shock wasn't just the announcement. Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Britain Daily. It's completely free and it helps us keep bringing you the hard-hitting stories that matter. Back to the chaos. It was what Farage said about Starmer's future. When asked directly what the Prime Minister should do in the national interest, Farage didn't hesitate. He didn't soften his words. He didn't dodge the question. He said bluntly that if a Prime Minister loses credibility, if they can't command respect internationally, if their own party doesn't stand behind them, then it's not in the national interest for them to stay. And then came the line that sent political shockwaves across the broadcast. Farage said he believes Starmer will resign before long. Not might, not could, not if things continue this way. He said he will. And in that moment, you could almost feel the political atmosphere shift. Because this wasn't just another opposition figure criticising the government. This was a man positioning himself and his party as the alternative, as the next force ready to step in when the current leadership collapses under its own weight. And that's the bigger picture here. This wasn't just about Starmer, it was about what comes next. Because if the Prime Minister really is losing authority, if the government is slipping into infighting, if the scandals keep piling up, then the real question isn't if you thought that first exchange was explosive, what came next was even more revealing. Because once the cameras kept rolling, the conversation turned from confrontation to succession. And suddenly, the focus wasn't just on Keir Starmer. It was on who might be waiting in the wings. There were murmurs about internal tensions, questions about authority, doubts about direction, and the quiet but unmistakable suggestion that the Prime Minister's position might not be as secure as Downing Street would like the public to believe. According to critics, the problem isn't just one policy, one scandal, or one bad week in the headlines. The concern being raised is much deeper, a loss of confidence. Because in politics, perception is everything. If the public senses weakness, opponents pounce. If backbenchers sense vulnerability, whispers begin. And if allies start preparing for the future without you, that's when the real danger starts. And that's exactly what figures like Nigel Farage are betting on. Farage's argument wasn't just that Starmer has made mistakes. His argument was that the Prime Minister has lost the authority required to lead on the world stage, that he no longer commands the same respect abroad or the same loyalty at home. And in the brutal world of Westminster politics, once that perception takes hold, it spreads fast. Because politics is not just about leadership. It's about momentum. It's about confidence. It's about who looks like they're winning. And right now, according to critics, the momentum doesn't look like it's with Starmer. Behind closed doors, speculation is already swirling about who could step in if the pressure becomes too great. Senior figures, rising stars, party heavyweights, names that until recently were only mentioned in long-term leadership conversations are now being quietly discussed as short-term possibilities. That's the sign of a government under strain. When leadership talk starts early, it rarely ends well for the person currently in charge. Because once the question changes from can he lead to who replaces him, the political clock starts ticking. And that's exactly the shift Farage is trying to force. By declaring that Starmer's resignation is not just possible but inevitable, he's attempting to shape the narrative, to make the idea of a leadership change feel less like speculation and more like a countdown. It's a classic political tactic. If you repeat something enough, it starts to sound like reality. And if enough people start to believe it, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the real question now isn't just whether Starmer can weather this storm, it's whether the people around him still believe he can. Because once that faith disappears, the end often comes faster than anyone expects. What happened in that clash wasn't just another political argument, it was a signal. A signal that something deeper is shifting beneath the surface of British politics. Because when Nigel Farage talks about going on to a war footing, he isn't speaking in metaphors. He's talking about strategy, resources, candidates, and a campaign machine being switched on at full power. And that should worry the establishment. For years, mainstream parties assumed reform-style movements would peak, fade, and disappear. That they were protest votes, temporary reactions, political storms that would pass. But this time, it feels different. Poll numbers are tightening. Public trust in traditional parties is shaky. And every time Keir Starmer looks uncertain or defensive, it gives Farage and his allies a powerful narrative to push. A narrative that says, this government isn't in control. This leadership is weak, and only a political outsider can fix it. Whether you agree with that or not, it's a message that resonates with voters who feel ignored, frustrated, or simply tired of the same old promises. And that's where the danger lies for Labour, because elections are rarely decided by loyal party supporters. They're decided by the voters in the middle, the ones who swing, the ones who change their minds, the ones who vote based on feeling, not party loyalty. If those voters begin to believe the Prime Minister is under pressure, losing authority, or facing rebellion inside his own ranks, the political landscape could change very quickly. And Farage knows this. He isn't just attacking policies. He's attacking perception, he's attacking confidence, he's attacking leadership itself. Because once the public starts to question a Prime Minister's strength, it creates a chain reaction. Poll numbers drop, headlines turn negative, party unity starts to crack, and suddenly, an election that looked comfortable becomes a fight for survival. And if reform manages to capture even a small percentage of disillusioned voters, it could split the vote in critical seats across the country. That's how political earthquakes start. Not with one big explosion, but with small cracks that widen over time. And after this clash, those cracks are starting to show. So where does all of this leave British politics? On edge. Because what we just witnessed wasn't just another heated exchange between rivals. It felt like a turning point. A moment where the tone shifted, where the gloves came off, where the language got sharper, and the stakes got higher. Farage isn't treating this like a normal political disagreement. He's treating it like the beginning of a full-scale campaign. And Starmer, for the first time in a long time, is facing serious questions not just from opponents, but from the atmosphere around him. Questions about authority, questions about unity, questions about the future. And in politics, those questions can be more dangerous than any speech, any debate, or any headline. Because once doubt creeps in, it spreads. So the real question now is simple. Is this just another political storm that will pass in a few news cycles? Or was this the moment that changed everything? Was this the clash that exposed deeper problems? The confrontation that triggered a shift in public opinion? The spark that set the next election into motion? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. Westminster is watching, the parties are preparing, and the battle lines are being drawn. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think this clash has damaged Starmer's leadership? Or is this just political theatre being blown out of proportion? Let us know your opinion in the comments. And if you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more updates on the biggest political battles shaping Britain today.